and welcome. My name is Mapleless, they, he, she, and today's pick is Harrow County, Volume 1, Countless Haints by Cullen Bunn and Tyler Crook, published by Dark Horse Books in 2015, collecting issues 1 to 4, also originally published in 2015. The series is apparently 8 volumes long and wrapped up in 2018. My initial reason for picking up the series was for the Realm of Comics book club, but due to my extreme dislike for Lock and Key, on top of my ever-growing pile of books to read, I decided to ease into the series and start with just an initial thoughts review covering Volume 1. Content notes for body horror, lynching a witch, guts, and harm to animals. As a horror comic, it is perhaps unsurprising that violence and gore are a few notches higher than is usual for me. There is a certain level of fascination and detail given to the blood and guts, and every opportunity to have a character without skin and or blood spattered everywhere is taken. That said, I didn't feel like Harrow County was trying to be the most grossest thing I ever read or most violent or anything like that, but that is certainly not an objective observation. Looking at the creative team, Cullen Bunn is credited with the script. From North Carolina, Cullen Bunn has now lived in Missouri for quite some time. This certainly does not preclude him from writing New England horror, but it struck me as interesting. Prolific Bunn has published with Oni Press, Marvel, DC, Dynamite, IDW, Dark Horse, Image Comics, Vertigo, and more. Apparently, the only other work that I've read before was Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, back before the Great Channel reset. Mixed feelings. Perhaps I should revisit Deadpool if/when the actors get a fair deal. Who knows? I'm writing this a bit in advance, so maybe they already have. Either way, let me know what y'all think. Next, we have artist, letterer, and co-creator Tyler Crook. Apparently, Crook started out working in video games before jumping over and illustrating Petrograd. According to Tyler's About page, he has a lot of pets. Other series he's illustrated include The Sixth Gun, B.P.R.D, Hell on Earth, Deering, Xing, Bad Blood, Witchfinder, and Black Hammer, among others. This is my first time taking in his art style with my eyeballs. What kinds of keywords came to mind reading this first volume of Harrow County? Horror, isolation, guts, cult, wilderness, healing, escape, discovery, community, New England, control, and witches. Flipping this book over to look at the summary, the publisher describes this volume as follows, quote, "Welcome to Harrow County. Young Emmy always knew that the woods surrounding her home crawled with ghosts and monsters, the countless haints of Harrow County. But on the eve of her 18th birthday, she learns that she is connected to these creatures, and to the land itself, in ways she never could have imagined." End quote. We also have blurbs from Mike Mignola, Jeff Lemire, Michael Chabon, Mark Miller, Steve Niles, and Joe R. Lansdale. Writing-wise, looking through the negative reviews, it would seem that some people are tired of New England kill the witches plots, which is fair. It's a heavy used point in history. Of course, the only reason that I'm not particularly burned out on this sort of story is because I don't tend to read them, which could have gone either way. But combined with the fact that it hit me, perhaps not objectively so, as a million times less offensive than Lock and Key Volume 1, Welcome to Lovecraft, which stomps on poor, disabled, and queer people to hold up an ideal white heteronormative family/bloodline, it's not that hard to be better than that in my books. Stylistically, I will admit that the character designs were my favorite initially. There's certainly nothing wrong with it, technically speaking, though, so I eventually settled into a bit more. The faces were just odd, but perhaps that can also be chalked up as part of the ambiance. I did enjoy the color schemes and coloring technique. I was a bit surprised by how much of the book was endnotes. Overall, a very fast read, for sure. Looking at the different identities intersecting in Harrow County, gender was one of the first things to jump out at me, centering a young woman coming of age in a rural town, learning there's something everyone else knows that they aren't telling you. I appreciate how active and unsexualized Emmy is. Overwhelmed by an onslaught of new information, she keeps moving, adapting, and overcoming. And overall sexuality has been pretty much a moot point so far, with no characters appearing to, at least currently, be in a romantic and or sexual relationship with anyone else, ? Sexuality is one of those few things where it can be good both if you either include diverse and or marginalized identities or can actually scrub out all representation entirely. The issue for me, at least, is mostly around only representing heterosexuality, particularly if it's held up as the default/norm. Race saw a bit of diversity with a black father and daughter in the small New England town. Digging a bit into what exactly a haint was, It was really interesting to read about the ways that it is intertwined in Gullah Geechee culture. As a side note, I would definitely recommend anyone who isn't already familiar with Gullah people do a deep dive on their history and culture. Bodies, apparently normative or aberrant, feel like they are fairly central to at least the ambiance of Harrow County. Like so many horror stories, check back in with me for the series wrap-up for more thoughts on that. Class felt the most ignored. Wrapping things up, I do in fact enjoy horror comics. It's just hard sometimes to find the right kind that aren't just perpetuating stigma against marginalized people. That's literally all I ask. And to be fair, so far Harrow County has mostly delivered. I will be continuing with the series, 3 stars. Bio, keep reading, and stand with striking workers. And Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, an Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.